Hi, I'm Peter Ashley, the Director of Marketing Communications for Mendoza. Welcome to this episode of Mendoza Dialogues, where we're talking about entrepreneurship, which is always a popular topic. We've got a great lineup of guests for you today, so let's get right to it. First, we have Mendoza's own Sam Miller. Sam is the Director of the Gigot Center for Entrepreneurship and is also on faculty. Sam has 3 degrees, one from U of I, an MBA from Michigan, and an engineering degree from Northwestern, focusing on innovation. Welcome, Sam. Thank you. Next, we have Gary Gigot, who's a 1972 graduate of Notre Dame in business, is an accomplished business leader, an entrepreneur, and a philanthropist, and is the benefactor behind the aforementioned Gigot Center for Entrepreneurship. Among his previous roles, one I thought was very interesting was VP of Marketing for Visio prior to it being acquired by Microsoft. So anyone who's been stuck doing process maps with boxes and arrows knows Visio very well. Recently, Gary co-founded Venly, which is a software company based here in South Bend that's focused on growth strategy. So welcome, Gary. And finally, we have Pooya Ghiaseddin, who is the Chief Product Officer for Venly and is responsible for driving Venly product design, development, and the branding of Venly software. Pooya holds 1 patent already, and I believe has another one pending. He's also an MBA grad from Mendoza. Welcome, Pooya.
Thank you.
So thanks, guys, for being here. Entrepreneurship is a great topic, but the challenge with a great topic is that everybody wants to weigh in on it, and everyone thinks they have the right to weigh in on it. So my first question I'm going to direct to you, Sam. What gives Mendoza the credibility to really talk about entrepreneurship in a meaningful way?
Yeah, that's really a great question, and it's let me just start by saying it's a privilege to be able to lead the entrepreneurship effort here at the Mendoza College of Business and the Gigot Center. Gigot Center was founded about 15 years ago, and it was never really a quest for national rankings per se, but really it was about developing this thing we call entrepreneurial confidence in our graduates, right? Preparing them for a lifetime of entrepreneurial impact. And so that's really the challenge that we embrace. And the question is, well, how do we do that, and what have we done over the years to position ourselves as a recognized leader? And there's really 3 aspects to that. The first is creating and delivering world-class educational experiences, both in the classroom and outside. And there's, as the Mendoza record shows, there's really no one who does it as well as Notre Dame does, and entrepreneurship is one of our areas of excellence. Secondly, we align our entrepreneurial focus with the mission of the university, creating entrepreneurship as a force for good in the world, solving meaningful problems, and the powerful energy that creates is unmistakable. And then third is the development of our network, our network of alumni and successful founders and those sorts of people who can engage with our students to create a uniquely Notre Dame entrepreneurial experience. And in that context, we've created some really great programming, from business plan competitions to conferences, and great success stories across the board.
That's great. So in a nutshell, we have every right talking about entrepreneurship at Mendoza.
Yeah, I'd add one other comment too, and that is I think over the 15 years that Sam cited, a lot of people have put their time in on the rock pile. And by that I mean, we started initially with an academic focus and judging business plans, and the network got built, and all that was great. And a lot of kids got very well educated on what entrepreneurship could be, but now people, the students, the faculty are actually starting businesses. A lot of people are graduating from here and taking the choice of going to entrepreneurial companies. So we not only, we really live and breathe entrepreneurship at a very practical level in addition to the accomplishments that Sam cited.
And you're a pretty recent graduate, Pooya. Any thoughts additionally to that about how entrepreneurship was a focus here?
Yeah, definitely. So I was here for undergrad and for MBA, and just the change that happened between 2003 and 2008 was astounding. Specifically, even if we're talking about the business plan competition and just the support overall in the area and from university, like along with the innovation park, it really has improved over even the short period of time between my 2 degrees.
That's great. And it seems like entrepreneurship used to be almost a specialty among people. I mean, it was a rare group of people that attempted entrepreneurship, and it seems like since the Great Recession, that has changed in the sense that a lot of people are going into entrepreneurship or attempting to, and it's really enjoyed a resurgence not just here but globally. So is that causal? Is that coincidental to the Great Recession? What do you think is driving that?
I think there's 3 things there. So one of them specifically is the timing. after a recession, and this has been true since the 60s even, people tend to go back to school. So a lot of people that were in the workforce, their careers ended, or they lost their job, or they just decided that it was a great time for them to go back to school. What happened was the market kind of changed while they were in school, and so when they came out, they were coming back to a different world essentially. Specifically, I think there was a new opportunity. The world had flattened a lot over the couple of years following the recession. Technology had increased greatly, so specifically, mobile devices, tablets were available, the personal computing had become very affordable, and so people started to have these in their homes, and the reach that you had if you wanted to start a new company was a lot greater. Specifically reach to customers, so using social networks, it was a lot easier to get in touch with your customers, your potential customer base, but I think also with investors. So things like Kickstarter only started in the last couple of years, but they make it very easy for someone to start a company and receive funding for it. And even if you're not going the Kickstarter route, I think the technology in general has made it very easy for you to get information out about your potential opportunity or the venture you're trying to start, and do some matchmaking with VC firms or private equity firms that might be interested in that. If you think back a few years before the recession, if you wanted to find an investor that was out in Silicon Valley, you basically had to be out there. Now it's a lot easier for those organizations to find information about your company just online.
Yeah, I'll add a couple of quick things too. It's as if the entrepreneurship now is the new normal for young kids. I know 5-7 years ago, everybody was in the business plan competition, would participate and then go back to their corporate jobs, right? That's not what's happening here now. And I think it's a subtle thing that's occurred, but it's as if the ability to work independently, to follow your idea is now, the bravery of it all, the confidence has just been built up in a way where there's more people in entrepreneurial activities than there are necessarily going the corporate path. You can't even start at a corporation and be there your whole career anymore. It's not even possible with all the dynamics of change. There was also a recent article about the struggle that they're having on Wall Street, because the red hot kids that used to go to Wall Street, they're all going to the Bay Area now or to Boston and to get involved in startup communities, and that's a big trend.
There's no question it's become easier to create a startup, from rapid prototyping to e-commerce to crowdfunding. All of these things make the pathway a little bit easier. But you also see a demographic shift or dynamics within demographics. It used to be that founders were sort of in the middle of the curve, middle of their career sort of thing, and now you're seeing it from the edges of the curve. Seniors, baby boomers, retiring with wealth that want to go on to their next adventure. As Gary and Pooya recognized the changing expectations of the millennials and that sort of thing. You also see women, lots of entrepreneurial energy in women who are tired of facing the glass ceiling in the traditional corporate world and are putting their ideas to work. Immigrants have always been a force of entrepreneurial activity, and with the rise in immigration activity, we see more and more startups coming from that community. So there's demographic undertones going on that really make this a mainstream phenomenon.
And you mentioned, several mentioned the changing landscape, and it's easier to start a business, it's easier to get across your message to a wider audience. It seems like not that long ago, business planning was just this nightmarish, complicated process. And now I feel like if I had a great idea and 6 PowerPoint slides, I could go to Silicon Valley and get rich. I mean, I know that's not quite true, but it is a lot simpler. Can you explain how it is simpler? And what are we doing at Mendoza to make sure people go out there and actually can compete in the way it is today?
Why don't you take the lead on that, Sam?
Sure. So there's clearly a shift in the expectation of the investment community, of the advisory board networks and that sort of thing. They want a concise description of what's the problem, how are you going to solve it, what traction do you have, how are you going to make this a viable business. And there's a great saying that says that no business plan survives first contact with the customer, and that's how a lot of the change is going on, and how Mendoza and Gigot are trying to lead the way in that change. Our business plan competition has become much less planning oriented and more pitch centric, from the very first submittals that the entrants give all the way through the mentoring and the coaching and the presentations they give in the finals. It's more about what's your status and what's your value proposition tell me it directly and tell me it quickly. The role of the plan is now much more actionable. It's a living document. It's a roadmap that grows and learns with the founders. It helps them answer the question of what needs to be done next. It's a clear articulation of the traction that they have. What have they done? What evidence do they have that there's product market fit? And it is, again, meant for an audience that wants a concise description of what do you intend to do, where are you at, and what are you going to do next.
You know, I'd throw a couple of things on there too. I always look for the ability of a team's to convey the logic behind their business, and their logic can be the total addressable market and the size of it. It can be the pain point that the users are experiencing. It can be, okay, here's our product and product platform. That all syncs up. Here's our initial go-to-market strategy. I say that because it always changes. And then here's the baseline financials. But you can't do a 3 or 4 year revenue model anymore. So spending a lot of time on that, doesn't make sense. But if the logic is there, it really comes across. There's a company I know in Seattle that started as a database company, going to be a new cloud-based database company, and they went into a number of market segments. They now found a market segment in municipality and in the open data portal area, and that's 100% of what they do. And that was never part of the original business plan, but they're a very successful company. And the companies are going through what they call pivots after they get in the marketplace, and very successfully. So there's a lot of new methods and tools that are in play. But I look for the logic in the plan. If that's there and the team is good, you got a good shot.
I think, as we mentioned earlier too, the number of deals that these investors now have access to has grown exponentially over the last few years, and particularly with the internet and other kind of enabling technologies, they can reach them much more quickly. So I think having a standard set of metrics that they're looking at across different deals that they might potentially invest in has become ever more important. So I think that's another reason why you see this kind of consolidation on a series of particular metrics, because they're analyzing a number of different deals and trying to decide exactly where to put their money for the greatest return.
Another example of what the Gigot Center is doing to model the classroom learning experience, the curriculum around this market expectation, is our Entrepreneurship Capstone course. We've created a flipped classroom approach to it. So the students don't sit in the class and listen to lectures and take notes and do case studies and that sort of thing. They work on business ventures, and they pitch in class to a panel of seasoned entrepreneurs from the Notre Dame community, and every week over the course of the semester is essentially a venture pitch, hearing directly from the types of people that in the entrepreneurial space they will be working with or pitching to, and aligning that experience with what the actual marketplace.
So what's the reaction of the students been to that?
It's been terrific. So last year was our first iteration. We had undergrads in the fall and MBAs in the spring, and one of our undergraduate ideas from the course, which didn't exist before and pivoted many times, made it to the semifinals of the business plan competition. And one of our MBA ideas is now a startup.
Wow, that's great. So we're kind of getting around this, but I really wanted to ask. I mean, students of leadership have heard the phrase many times: leaders are born and not made. I know the research has sort of not shown that not to be the case necessarily, but others say that you're born into greatness. Others have greatness thrust upon them. So entrepreneurship, can you really teach that, or is it innate to be an entrepreneur? And if so, what can you teach versus what might be innate?
Yeah, that's a profound question, Peter, and it's really at the essence of what we try to do here. And I like to start with the idea of mindset, right? That an entrepreneurial mindset is something that can be nurtured. And at the opposite end of the spectrum is what we call the incumbency mindset, which is what you find generally in traditional businesses, right? Extend and defend, modest incremental innovations, continuous improvement, stick to your knitting sort of mindset. And the challenge is that that's not where the big ideas come from. Entrepreneurial mindset is more of a sort of a discomfort with the status quo, comfort with ambiguity, curious nature, maker instinct, those sorts of things, bias towards action, more of an explorer sort of thing. And by giving students the opportunity to to engage in a world that has that mindset all around it helps them to embrace it. It's a little bit intimidating. It's a little bit less safe than the incumbency mindset. So certainly on the mindset side, we can nurture that. Then there are a whole suite of new and now emerging but proven techniques and methodologies that we can give them experience, muscle memory, if you will, working with things like agile development and business model validation and things of that nature. You put the two together and you create both the capability but also the confidence to become more entrepreneurial.
Pooya, what's your view on that topic? Since for me it's too long ago to kind of remember how it all happened. So how about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I think that there are parts of it that you can learn. There's parts of it that you have to live. And then I think there's parts of it that you have to be, kind of along with what Sam is saying. So, I mean, certainly you can study what companies have done in the past and what has worked, what hasn't worked. And I think essentially being an entrepreneur is a lot like studying to be a general manager of a business. So you obviously have to understand finance, you have to understand accounting, management. These are all disciplines that you can learn in school. I think the living, though, that really comes from actually having some experience in these types of situations at other organizations. I think the key difference for a startup, if you're comparing it to a well-established company, is that everything is a lot more critical. So things that that wouldn't have sunk the ship if you were at a large company could possibly sink your ship at a startup, especially because they're very fragile in their infancy. So I think being able to read the market, read your customers, these are all things that are important if you're at an established company. But if you're at a startup, they're ever more critical because a couple of wrong moves could sink the whole thing. And then I guess finally, the B part, I would really say that entrepreneurship isn't for the faint of heart. If you're very risk averse, this probably isn't the line of work for you. There are a lot of sleepless nights in starting any kind of new thing that's new to the world, and particularly if it's disruptive. So I think it definitely takes a certain type of person. Now you can adapt and grow in that over time, but there's a certain something that has to be there for you to be extremely successful.
It has to be the case. I'm really hoping that's the case because I see, I'll watch something and I'll see, God, I've had that idea for years, or what a great idea. I've had that idea before and I have great ideas. And then it's that getting off the couch and doing something about it is really the part that you're talking about, the mindset. You're talking about that desire to actually make it happen. Yeah. And that to me is where there's a big divide from people who have a great idea and then people who actually make it happen. So is that the part you can help teach as well, getting people off their rear ends to do it?
I'm not sure you can teach that. I think because there has to be an embedded characteristic that you know how, mind-numbing execution comes to mind, right? Which is an old phrase from my Microsoft days, but that once you get the basic business logic down, once you get the plan framed, once you get your team assembled, it's about how you execute every day and the speed by which you do it. I mean, we're 2 years into our existence at Venly, and we are still focused on execution, and we're focused on moving as fast as we can because the future gets brighter the more you accomplish today. So I think the executional piece is really critical, and you got to be not only have to be able to take the risk, but you got to be an executor.
Shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to talk about impact investing and its role at Mendoza. It's obviously an important topic now. It aligns with our mission about being a force for good. But for those who don't know impact investing, it's profitable investment, but it's designed to help solve some kind of problem in a sustainable way that's facing the world. So it might be investing in a way to bring water to an impoverished community, but do it in a profitable way that's sustainable, as opposed to, deciding how to make a golf ball go a little farther or something. So it's that for good, but it's profitable. So with that background, tell us how impact investing as a philosophy is affecting Gigot and how we're instilling that on our students, and then anything from you guys that wants to add to that.
Sure. So impact investing is a key pillar of Mendoza and then therefore by proxy at the Gigot Center. And Peter Drucker famously said that every big societal challenge is really a business opportunity in disguise, right? And what he was saying is that who better to innovate to serve these challenges than business? They've got the resources and the reach and the incentive to solve this, but it requires an and point of view, right? That so much of the time it's been we can generate a profit and grow the business, or we can serve these societal needs. But now we're seeing the understanding that it's the overlap where there's really a new sense of capability here. And so the challenge is to find those opportunities to create an impact and do so with a business model that can generate a surplus. And the reason that matters, Peter, is because once you find the recipe, the business model that allows you to generate the surplus while you're creating clean water or helping to educate those who historically have not had access to education or any of the other societal challenges, those ideas can become scalable. They become self-sustaining financially, and they no longer need to go back again and again to the development community, the foundations and the grants and the donations and that sort of thing. They can scale, and that's what this world needs. We've got literally billions of people that need these solutions, and that's where it's really a new mindset, if you will.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, the one thing I would say about everything from impact investing to social enterprises, which is sort of the continuum that things evolve on, I think it's in its infancy right now. I think we've yet to see a set of great companies that are breakout, fast-growing, but have the social cause embedded in it. There's a lot of tinkering in various areas, and all very well-intended. I would just say the logic of the business model, the architecture of the business for a really true powerhouse social enterprise is harder, and therefore I think we're just in the early stages of seeing that whole area develop. A lot of people who've done very well, like in the major tech areas, have instinctively taken their rewards like 10 times over and tried to put them back into impact investing in social enterprise, and that's all great. But I'm still looking for the set of really great companies that they already always at the tip of your tongue. Now that is a social enterprise. That is impact investing, and I think we're early, and there's a lot of opportunities, particularly for the kids coming out of schools over the next 5 to 10 years.
And part of the challenge, I couldn't agree more that we're just seeing this thing come into the mainstream discussion. But one of the big challenges is how do you measure? How do you define and then measure impact in a way that can be compared, can be improved, can be understood by investors in a way that is spoken in the language of business, so to speak? And that's an area where we're taking a real close look at how can we help to move the needle on that and use our students and our business plan competition and our network as an opportunity to bring that into the marketplace.
And the only answer to that is with hard data. With hard data, like all the other facets of a business are tracked.
Because a lot of businesses, not impact investing, even particularly just in general, start because there's some need that someone sees, right? And says, I've got this great idea to fix this need, or people really want this particular, solution differently. But all these problems around the world have been around forever. What do you think took so long for people to realize that this is a great opportunity for business? Because is it because people thought you couldn't do it profitably before, or what?
Yeah, I think part of it is the landscape has changed, and there's a lot of enabling technologies that are now available that make it easier to deliver a solution that maybe seemed obvious before, but there just was no way to get it in the hands of consumers in a cost-effective way or in a quick way. I read an article recently on Uber, and they were talking about how Uber wouldn't have been possible 5 years ago because we didn't have GPS in the phones miniaturized to the point that everyone was carrying it around with them. We didn't have the mobile apps for you to actually be able to make the call. Now, they came out with a completely different thing on top of all that, but they were able to read the market and say, at this point, we have sufficient technology available such that our product offering can be consumed by the mass market. And I think that's something that's really changed over the last couple of years, particularly with the miniaturization of processing power and the kind of everything that you have at your fingertips on your smartphone and your tablet. Has really gave opportunity to a lot of new startup companies where the need had always been there, but the way to kind of effectively offer that solution wasn't there until recently.
The other thing let's not lose sight of this main force that's happening around the world right now, and it's called the Gates Foundation, and everything that they're doing and the amount of financial resource they have and the brain power of Bill and his ability to understand diseases around the world, 10 of them, maybe better than anybody that has spent their whole life doing that. I worked with him at Microsoft, or worked for him, and he's just remarkable in his intellectual capacity, curiosity, and and tenacity. And he's doing things now that are kind of creating a broader and broader market for everything related to impact investing. And it's always good to keep track of what the Gates Foundation is working on, because you're going to see things well out into the future.
And it's a question of framing, right? The Gates Foundation looks at these not as philanthropy, but as investment.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a big change, right?
That's a
That
good
an
point.
investment is something that will yield a return. And so that the question, well, how do you measure that return and that sort of thing? But it has to include a financial, economic, self-sustaining aspect.
Otherwise, it's charity, which is fine, but it's not sustainable without donations.
But
Right.
the reality is that next year you need to go back
Hit your
and,
donors up
and
and
you're
get-
spending your time raising the money to feed the thing. Whereas here, the idea is that the business model creates that surplus through exchange of value, sharing value. One of the questions then is how does Mendoza and the Gigot Center help to advance this cause? And one way is through the great opportunity for collaboration with all of the centers and institutes and thought leaders on this campus that are exploring these challenges and opportunities. Also within the Gigot Center, we have our Irish Impact Conference. It's a conference around social entrepreneurship that we hold every year. We bring in thought leaders and practitioners from around the world who come together to share ideas and challenge ourselves to push the needle on this. And then finally, we have one of the largest prizes in our business plan competition is the Clow Family Prize for Social Impact, which is awarded every year to a business plan entry that has the highest opportunity to create a solution, a meaningful solution, scalable solution to a societal problem.
Great. And I want to come back to someone made a comment about the future. Obviously, we can't predict the future, but we have to, in a sense, teach our students to be able to predict the future a little bit and look for disruptive change, which comes down and shatters an industry or a product segment. What are we doing? What do you recommend for aspiring entrepreneurs in general to look for those kinds of things and be ahead of it? And what are the things that are going to help them be ready to take advantage of those things to launch a business?
So I think yeah, there's maybe two aspects to that. So some of them might be technologies that will enable the type of business that you want to start. So they're not going to be things that you directly compete with, but as we were talking about Uber and some of the technologies that lay the groundwork for them to exist, there are things looking over the next couple of years that could be coming out that might spawn a new business for you where you're not competing with any of those items, but they make it so that you can deliver your business. But I think also competitively, there's a lot of opportunity. Historically, large companies haven't really been known for creating markets outside of the first one that they established. So even if you look at a company like Apple and they're viewed as an innovator, most of the things they've come out with in the past 10 years, they were not the first to market with it. They just sat back and waited until somebody else established the market and they came out with a usually better product. But in some cases, they're also late to the party. So if you look at Apple Music that just launched a few weeks ago, it's trying to compete with Spotify. It has a lot of catch up to do right now because of how late they joined. And so I think the advantage that startups and small companies have is that they can be nimble. They can react very quickly to the market. They don't have a stage gate process necessarily that they have to go through. They don't have to create a massive product plan before they can launch something. If it's a group of 5 people that have started an organization together, if they want to pivot, as Gary mentioned earlier, they can do that, and there's not a lot of bureaucracy that they have to go through.
Yeah, I think for me, the only certainty in running a startup today is change. And it's not change once a quarter, it's not change once every 6 months, it can be change weekly, and major things can occur. And I think if you're not a student and absorber of all the available web-based information, by default you'll fall behind because you just don't know where that next nugget of insight's going to come from, whether it's Business Week or Forbes on Forbes.com or a particular technical journal or 60 Minutes or whatever it might be. There's just I'm shocked at things I learn every week by just trying to not watch ESPN so much and pay attention to the the broader business.
Well, there's so
shows.
many things though. That's the challenge, right? There's so many sources. What do you recommend?
Well, you mentioned the challenge of predicting the future, and we like to frame it rather than predicting the future is anticipating future change. Prediction implies that we can figure out what that correct single answer is, and the future is much more uncertain. It's much more filled with possibilities. And so it's a question of how do we both sense change, sense those weak signals, from the signal and noise, but then also how do we interpret the meaning in ways that may be non-obvious, right? That finding ways to understand second order and third order implications that are a little bit non-obvious, a little bit surprising is a big part of that. And then trying to understand what we call the mind of the future user, right? So this is a user who might not exist yet, that has problems that may have not emerged yet, that might be solved with solutions or technologies that might not be quite ready for prime time. And so we try to stretch what we call the cognitive proximity. We're so our worldview is so wrapped around the status quo that trying to imagine these things that are, like I said, non-obvious. I like to quote the futurist Jim Dater, and he has his second law of the future, says that any meaningful idea about the future needs to, at first, seem ridiculous. And the point he's making is not that we should run around chasing ridiculous ideas, but that if it doesn't at first sound a little bit ridiculous, it's just a small incremental change on the status quo. And out there in the second and third order implications, that's where breakthrough innovation is lurking. So sensing change, interpreting it, and then stretching our mindset to be a little bit more open to discovery.
Peter, there's one little thing I want to comment on. Peter, Sam just used the word status quo, and I want to use a little story from Venley. So we're a growth strategy company, and we're working with scores of companies right now, and our big platform helps people get fresh insights from their customers on how they're making decisions. What we are seeing consistently across every single industry or company we're involved with is every one of them has change afoot. Every one of them is looking at disruptions. It could be technology disruptions. We do a lot of work in healthcare. There's just tremendous amount of change going on there at every level in every institution. So and that's something that we're seeing accelerating, not decreasing. So I think we're in a world where where change is inevitable. It's continuous. People are learning how to be iterative in their business practice, and it's both an exciting and a challenging time at the same time. So it's what the world is.
Well, building on that, I think, and not to give a plug to Venley, but there are a number of technologies. Yeah, there's a number of technologies now that are available that make it a lot easier for you to stay in contact with your customers or your potential future customers and see exactly what it is that they're saying. And this wasn't available, 10, 15 years ago. So I think because of that, it is becoming a little bit easier. You might not predict what's happening in the far future, but at least to see where your customers want to be a year from now or where their needs are unmet. 6 months from now or even today, technology has made it a lot easier for you to ascertain that and kind of react to it.
Well, and building on that, even in the large enterprise space, there's a recognition that finding the emergent change is necessary. And so you see concepts like open innovation coming into play, where you have companies that are looking for ideas that are coming from outside of the enterprise, and either to help them work on their challenges inside or to extend into new emerging marketplaces. And so it's basically stems from the ability to have that the social network and the connectivity to a broader network.
That's great. No, and we're running out of time a little bit, so I just wanted to cover one more question and give you a chance to each react to it if you have a thought. The McCloskey Business Plan Competition came up a few times, and I think we have a sense of what that is. Can each of you, if you have one, an example of a success story that you particularly like from that? Sure.
So one thing I really like about the McCloskey competition is the diversity that we see in the outcome. And we have for example, the 2014 winner was a cancer diagnostic, high science, very complex technology, to the 2015 winner, which was more of a high design content. It was a dress shoe, men's dress shoe, that has the performance of a track shoe. And then certainly to the corner that is social entrepreneurship, right, where we have a company that is using the power of literature, novels, to help at-risk children who are in the justice system recognize, develop character traits, and pull themselves out of harm's way. And in doing so, by reducing the recidivism rate, create a huge layer of value, which is fueling the business model that's going to allow them to scale. So that whole diversity is just amazing to see.
Yeah, so actually I entered into the business plan competition multiple times while I was in undergrad, never won. And then while I was getting my MBA, I was actually part of a group that won, I think what is now the
That was probably your favorite one, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite one. So it was an idea where we would take medical devices from hospitals that they were looking to recycle or get rid of. We would take them and then as a donation, and then we would sell them in third world countries for severely discounted prices. And the idea was great. We had a lot of support from the university, not just in winning the award, but also getting us in contact with people that could help us commercialize it. The ultimate problem ended up being that we all got real jobs, and then so we stopped working on it. But the experience itself was great, and the connections that we made during that whole process, I think, really helped to at least plant in my mind that one day I wanted to start my own thing, which I've now had an opportunity to do.
Yeah, what Pooya just cited is interesting. It used to be that people would come to the competition, go through the plan, and then go back to their corporate jobs. And now what they're doing is actually
Yeah, use the word real job, Pooya.
he did. You know, so that's what's markedly changed around here. I mean, my example would be the group that we actually eventually sponsored the Undergraduate Business Award this year, and I really like the team that won, because it's a very simple idea of offering an opportunity for young students to participate in private equities by being able to buy fractions of shares. And so you can buy Google, you can put in $70 and buy 1/10 of a share of Google, and the core idea is really, really interesting. But now they're in California at I think it's Plug and Play they call it, an incubator that they won, and they're rapidly trying to put all the executional detail behind this. But it has a chance. It's a very simple idea, but if they can build the executional horsepower and detail to it, it has a chance of actually getting into the marketplace and being successful. Then it's got it's got a social enterprise twist to it. It's a really good idea, and we're cheering for them and hope they succeed.
That's great. Okay, last thing. This is going to be challenging. One word, entrepreneurship, in terms of either what you associate with that word or what you think is required of someone. So as you're thinking about your answers, I'll start with Pooya. Just one word that you think of that people would need or need to know.
Relentless.
Passion.
Foresight.
Very nice. Thanks so much, guys. Sam, Gary, Pooya, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
This concludes today's episode of Mendoza Dialogues. We hope to see you again in the next one. Have a great day.